Good morning, everybody. Welcome this morning to the Temporary License Subcommittee meeting. Thanks for joining. I think I know most of you, but in case I don't, I'm Deanna Stewart. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Engagement here at the agency, and I will be kicking it off this morning. So we'll walk through our virtual meeting protocols, do quick introductions, and then we will get started. So as you know, just make sure to please mute yourselves throughout the meeting. We will have opportunity, we'll let you know, like just unmute. If it remains to be a smaller group, feel free to unmute when you want to chime in. It's much easier when it's smaller numbers to not talk over so many people. So if you do have questions in the meantime though, feel free to put them in the chat and we will definitely address those throughout. If for any reason you are unable to unmute yourself or unable to hear anything and you can't communicate in the chat, feel free to email us at the dcyf.communityengagement@dcyf.wa.gov. And I believe that is it. All right, so we're going to do introductions. I will just go through and call on people off the list that I see. So if you can just introduce yourself by stating your name, where you're located, what your role is, center, family, home, FFN, provider, public attendee, or staff. And then we will do a word cloud here in a minute, right after we do introductions. So I am going to call on the first person, Vicki Greger.
I'm here. Vicki Greger from Spokane Valley, and I am the owner of Spokane Child Development Center.
Thanks, Vicki. All right, Susan Brown.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Susan Brown, located in Seattle. I'm with Kids Co., a nonprofit childcare organization. And I think that's it. Thank you. Good morning.
Thanks, Susan. Good morning. Let's see. I see Melissa put hers in the chat. Sandra Nelson.
Oops. Good morning. Sandra Nelson, Director of Prem ABC Childcare in Southeast Seattle.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandra. Dawn.
Yes, hi, I'm Dawn. I am a director here at Edmonds Lutheran Learning Center in Edmonds.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning. How about Carol? Wait, we already did. Hold on. There we go, Carol. Yeah. All right, we'll come back, Carol. Brian.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here. I'm Brian Trimble. I am the Executive Director of the Herzog Family Center, a private pay organization in Spokane, Washington.
Thanks, Brian. Brandy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brandy. I'm located in Renton, and I'm the admin assistant for WCCA, Washington Child Care Association.
Thank you, Brandy. Who do we have? Angelia.
Good morning. I'm Angelia Hicks Maxey. You can call me Angie. I am the CEO of Tiny Tots, and we are in South Seattle, the Rainier Beach area. We represent nonprofit childcare.
Thank you, Angie. I was going to call you Angie, and then I paused. Just like, I don't want to mess this up.
Yep, Angie's good.
Okay. Good morning. Laura.
Hi, my name's Laura Murphy, and I'm in Yakima, Washington, and I'm the owner of two centers called Taylor Tots Child Care Centers, and that's it.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, Carol, perfect. I see you put yours in the chat. She's the owner director from La Petite ELC in Yakima. And then Melissa, there we go, co-director of the same center in Yakima. All right, let me see if I missed. Let me go to staff. How about Jessica Spencer?
Morning, everybody. Jessica Spencer, Vancouver area, and CE team for DCYF.
All right, Eliza.
Good morning. My name is Eliza Yair. I'm the Child Care Licensing, Quality Assurance, and Continuous Quality Improvement Manager at DCYF.
Thanks, Eliza. Jessica Hertline.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jessica Hertline. I'm with the DCYF Community Engagement Team located out of the Spokane area.
All right, and then Emily.
Good morning. I'm Emily Morgan. I'm also in the Spokane area, and I'm a community engagement manager with the community engagement team. Thanks for joining us today.
I believe that is everybody. If I missed you, please feel free to unmute. All right, so we will do our word cloud introduction, and Jessica just put that link in the chat. So you can click on the link and answer just the very fun summer question, which I know summer has not fully hit all over Washington yet, but what is your favorite summer food? I guess beer could be considered a food if you really wanted it to be.
I read once that beer has all the essential nutrients and vitamins you need to survive. I don't know if it's true, but
It also makes me a better dancer, and I have better ideas.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's all the beer talking. All right, I see some in the chat: watermelon, shaved ice, cherries. Katie, I know we just did introductions, so if you are willing to unmute and just share name, where you're located, and your center name.
Yeah, my name is Katie Hudkins, and I'm the owner of Treetop Village Campus and Infant Center, and we're in Bremerton. We're licensed for 208. We're the largest infant program and largest center on the Kitsap Peninsula area.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Welcome. All right. Well, while that is continuing, feel free to keep putting answers in. Today, as most of you know, we are going to walk through, it's kind of our midway point for this work group. So we're going to walk through what we have so far in regards to recommendations of the topics we've already presented on and discussed. So we will be doing a lot of breakout activities and having a lot of conversations amongst members just to review where we're at so far and kind of get your guys' feedback and see next steps. So looks like Emily just put the feedback loop in the chat. So if you're able to click on that and review that document from, that was from the last meeting. So kind of feedback that from the merit discussion. Sorry, I'm trying to open it on my end.
Yeah, I think just a comment, that merit question came out of the communications presentation with Jason, but it was a more appropriate question for the merit team. So that's why it came in as merit, even though we didn't technically discuss merit at the last meeting.
Right. Thanks, Emily. So there's also a background check, update questions and answers to a lot of the questions that came out of that conversation. So does anyone, I know, I'll give you guys a minute to kind of look through this and then to see if anyone has questions.
Deanna, I have a question. This is Susan.
Hi.
On some of these issues that came up in merit, has there been any attempt to like correct them, or will there be an attempt to fix these problems? So what can we expect from this feedback?
That's a great question, Susan. We can definitely ask for what are the next steps. I know we had the conversation when we had Merit come and present, and today you're going to see some recommendations that you all provided in that previous conversation. So some of that should come out in these recommendations that you're going to see today. And then if not, we also are going to ask for additional recommendations based on anything you've heard since then. So if you don't see that written in, we can definitely add additional recommendations in, Susan. I know that doesn't totally answer your question yet.
Well, I think it's important that we address these things, because these, from my perspective, one of the ways to show sincerity behind gathering the feedback is actually following through on some of the problems. And I think these are some of the simple fixes that would make our lives so much easier. And this idea that the director doesn't, everything goes to the employee and not the director, when, there's such great turnover anyway, it doesn't make sense that more isn't actually even tied to the program, not even the director. So, but anyhow, I just really feel it's very important that some follow through happen and fairly expediently.
Right.
Thank you.
And yeah, Susan, we totally agree. We can definitely push that forward, and we'll ask. Even though we're doing the recommendations today, we can still include that. However, we will follow up and see if we can get an answer, if anything is going to actually be shifted, before we even do the end of the recommendations at the end of the year, right? So if we can get an answer for you for that today. I see some people can't open it. So we will definitely send this out in an email so you can also look at it. Angie, I have a question on guns allowed in home centers and not centers. I'm reading the WAC incorrectly. Are you seeing that in the document, or are you talking about something completely unrelated?
I don't want to be off topic. I just wanted to throw that out there, that's a question that I have, that when you read about guns on premises, it goes down and makes a whole bunch of no. But the exception is home centers can have them locked. And I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. So this is not a topic for here. This is a topic that I want somebody to get back to me on, so I can just understand it better. We're trying to make our own safety plans in light of Uvalde and, police not showing up and not going in. And we are basically like sitting ducks if we're not able to look at our own way to protect ourselves. So I'm trying to figure, all this out.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. We will take that question and try to get you a response to that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I actually would also love some feedback on that, or maybe a separate meeting at some point, just with all that's come up. I mean, I work in a church, and we recently had a gentleman shove his way in to go talk to the pastor about how wrong we are about our views on LGBTQ and threaten the pastor. And so it's now like I'm getting a little more serious and worried about our safety and what those things mean and how we can best protect ourselves. And I think something from licensing, like that would be helpful for directors to hear from licensing on this.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
just so you can know, Don, ours came out of the same place. We live in an area where there's a lot of homeless, and they tend to carry a lot of things on them, I guess, to protect themselves. But I don't know. This one particular guy is showing up and scared my staff literally to, she's shaking. She was going to the garbage can, and he's out there with machete, knife, and we're just like, we got signs. Private property, no trespassing, but they still show up. And then, we're like, we ran in, locked our doors, called. It took the police 2 hours to come out. So we're like, really? So what if he really wanted to do more? We just feel like this is not cool if the police don't come up. My parents were driving in the parking lot. So we need to know what what are we able to do to protect ourselves?
Right. Well, we will work with licensing to have a conversation at an upcoming meeting about this topic. So we'll do our best to try to get that, to have just a conversation, not just to answer this in writing, because I feel like it is coming up in multiple areas.
I agree. We are on the peninsula in Bremerton. We have the city of Bremerton police, and we have had to call the police probably 4 times in the last couple months just because of scary people at the door harassing our parents. And not once did the police actually come out to our center, which is just it. When there's little children and daycares involved, you would think that no matter what it is, they would come out just to follow up, but there's just been nothing for us.
Thanks, Katie, for sharing. We'll definitely do some work around this, and then we'll also get a message out as soon as possible so that if you guys know of other centers or family homes that are having the similar issues, that you can invite them to weigh in and have the conversation with DCYF licensing division. Laura, you have your hand up.
Oh yeah, I wanted to add to this that I don't know if DCYF is aware, but there is no reporting agency where the police actually know where we are. We actually were behind a standoff for 4 hours in my area, and I am working with the local YPD here in Yakima to try to get some sort of an alert system. But this just really leaves us as sitting ducks if something were to be happening outside and we're locked down inside and we don't know what's going on because the police never told us we were unsafe. And their reasoning is that DCYF doesn't communicate with them, and so they don't have a list of providers. So I think this is urgent.
Yep, we will definitely work to get this at the next meeting. Susan?
And Brian, thank you for saying that, but we said that. They did not come out. Even we told them there is a man out there with a machete and a knife. Fear for our lives, but it still took them 2 hours before they came.
I'm sorry for that. This is the reality that's happening more and more, and obviously with things that are happening in our society, we do need to be conscientious of the safety of our students and our staff and our families and our own selves. And
yeah, my parents were driving up. It's on my Ring camera. They're scared. We're like, come in with us. We're grabbing bleach. We got to bleach. Maybe we can douse with them, but that's not enough. So we got to figure this out. No. We got to be at a priority level. Like Laura said, if they do lockdowns, they should be mandated to call the centers that are in their areas. They call schools, but we can be connected next to a school and they won't call us. So all of this, we need to make a plan, and we should be better prepared so that we don't have to be like Uvalde where, everybody's saying, oh, I thought. No, let's be proactive around our children and be on the same wave level. But no, we said the same thing. You hear my voice. You know how I am. On the phone, I'm like, hey, here's this man, Still took them 2 hours before they came.
Yeah, so what I want to ask Deanna is that what is the time frame we can be thinking about? Because our next meeting is, a month away or whatever. And this matter is so urgent that, so like when you say we're going to go back and talk about this, do you mean today or tomorrow? What's the time frame are you committing to.
Right. So we will go and bring this up. We'll reach out to licensing today.
Okay.
I mean, we can even do it during this meeting when you all are in breakout rooms, because we can connect with them and kind of give them the scenario. And then once this recording is processed, we can, cut and paste the recording so they have the information and can see what the conversation was, and also have that happen. Our next meeting, now, we may need to do like a special meeting for this because our next meeting is July 6th. And I know you probably all saw the email where we are kind of going to go over the recommendations again, especially for family homes. If they couldn't attend today, we're doing an evening meeting for that conversation to walk through where we're at. So we will see if we can schedule a meeting in between now and then. So maybe we could probably shoot for like the last week of June, the week of the 27th, hopefully. But that will be our goal, is to have a special meeting for this.
Okay, yeah, I think it's really important. So I appreciate the commitment to making it happen sooner.
Could you make sure that I'm on that list? Because I actually have a complaint here. I've wrote legislators. I have camera footage of the danger we were put in from our local police department. They will raid houses next to a playground with children there and not even let us know. And so we're scurrying kids in, and their claim is that they don't know where we are located, even if there's signs and we're clearly marked.
Okay, Laura, and you received these emails, correct, for this group?
I got it from Julie because I'm a WCCA board member, so I don't think I get them directly from here. But if I could be included in that one, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll double check our list right now, but I think we added you, but we'll double check right now just to make sure you are added.
I don't think I see you, Laura. Can you drop your email address in the chat and I'll make sure you're added? I could be missing it, but in my quick scan, I'm not seeing your name.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will work to get a meeting scheduled to talk about this one specific topic on its own. It will not be linked with anything else. So we will communicate that in the follow-up if we can turn this around and get something scheduled within the next day. Then we'll message that out to all of you. In the meantime, so if we can go to, let's see, we are next going to, I'm going to turn it over to Emily so we can start doing the recommendation tracker and walking through the activity. So I know that we sent out some materials. Emily will go over those. If you have not received them, we can definitely send them out to you, or we're going to put them in the chat, right, Emily? Okay.
Yes, yep. Jessica will put that document in the chat for the recommendation tracker activity instructions. And I'm actually going to, Jessica, can you make me co-host? I'm gonna share the instructions on my screen while I go through this. Thank you. Okay, so I think you all, we sent this out last week, the recommendation tracker activity instructions. I know they're very detailed, so I apologize for that, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knows what they're doing when we're in breakout rooms. So we have kind of a small group, but we're still going to break up all providers into groups of 3. And all team members, please try and have a paper and pad or pen and paper next to you so you can take your own notes during this. We're kind of trying to envision it like we're all in the same room. What we would do if we were at an in-person meeting is just throw up a flip chart on the wall and write our comments in markers. So we're kind of trying to recreate that in the virtual environment. So if everybody could have something to take their own notes, that would be very helpful. And when you get into your groups, someone needs to be the timekeeper and someone needs to be the note taker who will actually put your notes on Jamboard. So the timekeeper will just make sure you're staying on time, and the note taker will be the one who's putting all the comments onto the Jamboard. And if in your group, nobody wants to be the note taker, or you feel like it would be better to have a community engagement staff member help out, you can just hit the ask for help button and we will send someone in to help you guys take notes. So There are 3 different Jamboards that you're going to be working on today. Jamboard A covers the key recommendations of increased translation and language access, improved DCYF communications to providers, licensing division CPS investigation process, and creating a provider rights and responsibilities document. And there are some sub recommendations that we captured from the meeting notes and feedback. So what you guys are going to be doing is commenting on the recommendations that you've developed so far. So if there's anything you don't like, things you do like, things you have edits or you see gaps, this is the time to make those comments. Jamboard B is eliminate over regulation. And there are 6 key recommendations under eliminate over regulation. So that has its own. And then Jamboard C covers accountability oversight for licensors, provider supports, and CCDF. And for CCDF, when we had that conversation, there wasn't a ton of time for feedback. So we actually didn't capture any specific recommendations. So for that, you guys can just, whatever recommendations you have on CCDF, put that on that Jamboard. And when you are making your comments, questions to consider, what would you identify as helpful, useful to providers? What would you identify as a challenge or potential barrier? And what gaps do you notice? What is missing? So those are some questions to consider when you're making your comments or recommendations. So before we send you into breakout groups, do you guys have any questions about that? I know it's a lot of information. Okay, perfect. So we'll be doing this on Jamboard, which is how we've been doing things the whole time. But like I said, if you have, oh, someone.
Sorry, no, it's just me. Can we screen share the Jamboard really quick so they understand, like when we talk about having some subcategories?
Yes, Jessica, do you have that? Can you pull that up?
Yep, 1 second.
Thank you. And Jessica also did put the links to the Jamboard in the chat. So you might want to pull those up now before we send you into breakout groups, and then you'll lose access to the chat. And just a reminder, Jamboard works best on Google Chrome. Okay, so see how Jessica has pulled up. This is the accountability/oversight for licensors slide and the recommendations. Licensors, providers receive a survey after licensing visits to provide feedback and increase trust between providers and licensors. And then another one, inter-rater reliability is clearly communicated to providers as optional. Survey to providers to evaluate IRR/monitor. This is kind of how each Jamboard is going to look. There might be up to 3 recommendations on one page. Yeah, like on this one, there's 3 recommendations. And some recommendations, have more than, they're multiple parts.
Does this make sense to everybody, what you guys are going to be doing?
I see
Or are there any
thumbs up from
questions?
Dawn, thank you. Okay, any questions before we put you into your first breakout room? You're going to be in there for about 30 minutes. All right, one more thing I should actually mention is if you're in room 1, you're going to be starting on Jamboard A. If you're in room 2, you're going to be starting on Jamboard B, sorry. And if you're in room 3, you're going to start on Jamboard C. And we'll bring you back after the 30 minutes to tell you what Jamboard to go to next.
Hey, I clicked the wrong button.
Oh, no, you're fine. I intended for you to come back to the main session. Just
Oh,
unless you want to join a room. That's up
Well, it
to
looked
you.
like I was in a room with Deanna Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, we came back, but we need to write that down, Brandy. Do we have any attorneys that work on our behalf when we have these CPS investigations? And how do we fight these so that we're not always viewed as guilty? I don't know. We got to figure that
Yes.
out part.
I will
It's,
definitely look into it, Angie.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I feel like getting put in the same category with, okay, she fell out of the, or she climbed out and then, you know, fell the last foot, that's in the same category as maybe a child getting out of the gate and running into the parking lot. You know, that they're viewed as the same, but yet, you know, getting out of the gate and getting into a parking lot is much more, you know, that's a huge thing versus what we got.
Agreed.
And we're viewed as the same. So yeah, it sucks.
And accidents are going to happen. I tell my parents straight off the bat.
Yep.
Your child is going to get hit, kicked,
Bit.
They're
going to fall over. They're going to
It's
get
full
pushed
contact
on.
sport, okay? It's got, so
Yeah.
don't come running to me about, they got bit. It's going to happen. I'm warning you. You're in childcare. They are in close proximity to each other, and it's kind of like their love language.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, it sounds like we're having some really good conversation. So I wanted to check in. Do you guys want to go work on the same Jamboard you were just on for about 5 more minutes? Or do we want to go ahead and rotate and we'll give you an extra 5 minutes on the next Jamboard?
I think rotating is fine, at least for me is fine. But I think the extra 5 minutes would be helpful.
Okay, yep, we'll add an extra 5 minutes. So you'll be in there for 35 this time instead of 30. And so if you were in room 1 with Angie, you were working on Jamboard A, but now you're going to be working on Jamboard B. So if you were in Angie's group, you're working on Jamboard B this time. If you were in room 2 with Dawn, you just did Jamboard B. So now you're going to move to Jamboard C. And if you were in room 3 with Carol, you were working on Jamboard C, and now you're going to move to Jamboard A. So make sure you go in the chat and grab the correct Jamboard link for your group, and then we will send you back into your same groups for 35 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think people are still trickling in.
Are we going over these as a group?
We won't be going over them as a group today, but yeah, this isn't the last time that you guys will look at these. So our next meeting is July 6th, and it's basically going to be kind of the same agenda, going through the recommendations for people who couldn't make today's meeting. So then after that meeting, we'll get the comments for the recommendations all together, and we'll review them again at the following meeting.
But we don't need to be at July 6th because it's going to be a duplicate of this.
Correct. Yes, you're welcome to come July 6th, but for those of you that are here today, it's basically going to be a repeat. So we'll hear maybe a different conversation because there might be different providers in attendance, but the activity is going to be the same. We're just hoping to get as many provider eyes and feedback on these recs as possible.
So the question I have with regard to the recommendations, was there was quite a few comments in there, like for instance, about separating EA from from licensing.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you guys just don't agree with our recommendations? What happens?
So as far as the community engagement team goes, we're not taking a position. Our job is to just facilitate your recommendations and get them to the agency. If licensing are you asking like if the recommendation isn't going to be followed, what happens?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Deanna, you can jump in if I'm misspeaking. But my understanding is that when we deliver the recommendations to the agency in the fall, there will be some sort of response about, what recommendations they're going to follow, what recommendations they aren't going to follow, and why. Sorry, I see Deanna. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, that's accurate. I mean, our goal and our hope, just from our perspective and how we engage external communities in general, is that once you provide the recommendations to DCYF, then we will continue to push for responses and see a response from DCYF in regards to all the recommendations. Like, will there be a follow-up? Will things be changed and shifted based on the feedback? If not, why? If so, when? So that is our goal from a team aspect, and we will be pushing for a feedback follow-up on everything that we submit.
And will there be a possible, is like there a way to appeal decisions or like?
So if, because this is a temporary license subcommittee of ELAC, the next thing that you'll towards the end, we will do a presentation. We will ask, members of this group who are comfortable to present to ELAC prior to submittal. That way, ELAC has a duty to report on the FSKA topics. So if they want to embed any of your recommendations or maybe provide all of them like a supplemental document to their FSKA report to the governor and to the legislature, then they can do that as well. So it would be in addition to you submitting that to DCYF, there would be that added layer. But as far as appeal, unless something's done like legally, you submit something a different way. I mean, there's really no appeal in regards to the recommendations, but we also have the provider support subcommittee that I would suggest and recommend a presentation happening at that group as well prior to ELAC. And then that group can also take on some of these topics on their own and start embedding them into their meetings and embedding them into their agendas to kind of push on the agency more on the higher priority recommendations that are submitted.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have one more Jamboard to get through for each group. So let me pull up the breakout rooms. So if you were in room 1 with Angie, you just worked on Jamboard B. So now you will be working on Jamboard C. If you were in room 2 with Dawn, you will be working on Jamboard A this time. If you were in room 3 with Carol, you'll be working on Jamboard B this time. And so we'll put you back in your stand groups for 35 minutes, and this will be the last Jamboard before we come together as a large group and we have some Mentimeter questions to go through based on today's activity. So before we send you back out into your groups, do you have any questions about what Jamboard or anything else? All right, then we will send you into your groups for 35 minutes.
Okay, well, my last little sticky note up. So you guys can record this. We talked about an idea of providers being able to use the licensing tool and go out and visit other providers.
Can you repeat that, Angie?
Providers like Tiny Tots would go to Laura's Taylor, what are you, Taylor Tots? Laura?
Yes, Angie, that's right.
So Tiny Tots would go to Taylor Tots. I would have the licensing tool and I would go through her building as like a mentor center. And I would see what I saw and we would sit down and we would share it. She would go maybe over to Spokane and use a tool with that provider. And so it's another way for providers to have our eyesights on each other provider and then share ideas that we see among each other. I don't think it always has to be licensing.
So are you talking kind of about maybe like an optional like mentor program?
I am.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yes.
We will capture that down into the notes. Thank you, Angie. Okay, so we are a tiny bit ahead of time and I know you guys have been working really hard. I just want to check in. Do you want to take a break or just push through and maybe end a little bit early today?
I would prefer to push through and end early.
End early.
Okay, all right. I think that's what you said too, Angie. So anyone want a break, feel free to just, take care of your own needs and take a break as needed. But we will go ahead and pull up the Mentimeter for some Mentimeter questions about the activity. Thank you so much, everyone, for the feedback that you put in there. We will take all of that in and put it together with the feedback that we collect at the July 6th meeting. And then we'll come back for the July 27th, I think it is. July 27th is the next one. Yes, okay. All right, so Jessica has that Mentimeter link in the chat. If you can click on that, and again, Google Chrome works better, or you can use a smartphone and go to menti.com and enter the code at the top. Based on the activity, what topics do you feel still need to be presented on? Are there any past topics that need an additional presentation? Okay, and I already see one for CPS process. So if someone wants to give a little bit more information on what they're talking, what specifically you would like the presentation on about the CPS process, that would be helpful. Because we did have the licensing division CPS process presentation, but if there's more info, we can definitely get that for you. I don't know if I asked that question in a way that made sense, but if there's any more context you have about what you would like from CPS, you can enter that into either the chat or the Menti. Resolution on background check. Overregulation deserves its own meeting. Okay, so with that one too, with overregulation deserves its own meeting. If you have anything else more specific, which I'm just asking that question to make sure that we get the right people at the table and have the right topics ready for you. So overregulation is a big topic. If you have specific things that you would like presented on, or if it's just a conversation.
I think that's the point. It's such a huge topic and there's so many things connected to it that rather than having 30 minutes to discuss it among, it requires more attention. So for instance, an understanding of why we need why these regulations came up, why they're even there. And, and that's part of the trust issue stuff is that, we're entrepreneur business people who are smart enough to run a business, but we have to be over-regulated to know how to do it well. And so I feel like there's a lot more to it than what we're able to cover in 30 minutes.
Okay, so you mean the discussion of overregulation needs its own meeting, that 30 minutes in the Jamboard?
Yeah, the discussion, but also the solutions.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I think that was part of what we talked a lot about, was the solution and the follow-up. And yes, you guys are facilitating, these concerns or whatnot, but we feel as providers, there's no follow through. There's no, addressing it with us after a complaint goes in or after a concern goes in. It just goes into this black hole and we never hear or see about it again. So where do we get the follow through with our licensors and the license department and DCYF? It's not there.
Okay, thank you for that, Katie.
Emily, I was going to chime in the licensing checklist. So question about that. We already had a meeting about the checklist. Is that a topic you want to have additional presentations on, or maybe there's something we missed during that conversation?
I think for me, because I'm the one that put licensing checklists, is that I don't even know what's on these checklists. I've been a director here for 2.5 years. I am told that it is so long and comprehensive and it's so random. They just pull information, or it's randomized and they just get this list just before they're coming out. Well, as a provider, that makes me really nervous to not have any idea what I'm supposed to be working on, what I'm supposed to actually have complete. Like I try and do my very best to follow everything and make sure that we are running how we are supposed to. But when I have a licensor coming in and just randomly looking at things and be like, oh, that's wrong. And then like, how was I supposed to know? And a lot of times we're like, well, you weren't really supposed to know. It just is on our checklist. So now we got to make sure you're following up on it. So even if I am getting a 124-page checklist, I want the whole checklist. I want to be able to see everything they are monitoring me for, because right now I can't even say what should be removed from that checklist because I don't know what's on it. And so that
ironically, while we've been on this call, licensing just sent out an email to all childcare providers saying that they would be doing unannounced monitored visits as of July 1st. So they're going back to unannounced monitoring visits. And as of July 1st, there will be a link to the checklist that they will be using.
Yeah,
so look at the email and see if they're, again,
okay,
if they
sorry,
actually
I didn't see that email yet.
Well, and so during that meeting, Dawn, I was just going to go back to what you were saying. During that, we provided the link, because there is a link on the website. So we can also send that to you. If you don't see it in the email that Katie's referencing, feel free to let us know, and we can send you the link to those materials where you can find that. We can send you the link directly.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm just trying to read as it's scrolling. Licensing staff providing 60 to 90-day window where they arrive unannounced. Help family homes and center directors plan for personal life events. What are reporting requirements for providers to follow? Clearly defined steps towards suspending a staff's background clearance. Clearly defined steps towards suspending a staff's background.
So I can speak on that too, because that was also mine. And this is something I am currently dealing with. I have licensing that was trying to suspend one of my staff's background clearances and say that they were not allowed to be on the premises without evidence. And they're saying this is just their process. This happens all the time. This is what I'm being told right now. I've been in Washington State childcare for 20 years, and I've never known a provider that has gone through an investigation to be suspended. And so now being told, oh, this is just what happens all the time. Well, it's not, because I've known plenty of providers, myself, my husband, and my staff, and other providers that I've worked with, never been suspended without an actual like criminal investigation happening. And so I feel that just to decide that they're suddenly going to suspend a staff member because of they're concerned about whatever, there should be very clearly defined steps that we should know in advance of when that's going to happen. It should be consistent across the board. If there is an investigation and they're saying this happens, then it should be every single person being investigated. for the concern of the safety of the kids, not just when they're randomly choosing. And I've reached out to other directors in Washington State about this, and this happens quite a lot where it's very random. There is no evidence that actually is for the whatever they're being investigated for, and licensing just randomly decides to suspend people. I'm not saying it's actually random. I'm sure there is a process or something like that, but it's not defined to us. And I've never seen somebody be suspended before and without actual like criminal charges being pursued. So I feel like that is something that as all of us as directors need to have that very clearly defined for us as directors.
John, I'm a little confused because you're the employer. So how could they suspend your employee? What do you mean by that?
So I was told, I received a phone call. I was told the first phone call I got that it was my choice if I was going to suspend the person. They were recommending it. I said, no, I would not be, because the evidence did not warrant that suspension. Then the next day I received a second phone call saying, well, we're doing it anyway. And that person their background check is being marked as suspended in merit, and they are not allowed to be on premises until this investigation is complete, which could be 30 days or more. So I fought it and I got that overturned. It took me like a lot of stress and a whole day to like go back and forth with licensing. I ran it up the chain in licensing, and I'm pretty sure that's why it got overturned. But I know plenty of other centers that would have just had to suck that up and dealt with not having one of their staff members there without evidence, because I had the CPS worker telling me that this was an overreach of their power.
Right.
So that is my problem. And that's something that I feel needs to be addressed, because I've spoken with other directors and they say that, yes, they have had this happen to them as well without evidence.
I agree.
Sorry, this is a very heated thing for me.
No, I agree. I agree with you, because that's your employee. And unless they have evidence, how can they do that? That's crazy.
This actually happened to me once too, and it is true. They just pick someone out of the hat, even if they don't have a suspect to list, even if they don't know anything. If somebody makes an allegation that something happened there, they have to assign a person to that. So if they don't have a description of a person, they will pick a lead teacher of some sort, just anyone they will list. And even if nothing was ever said about them specifically.
Yeah, I'm actually helping an employee that left my employment a while ago because that happened to her. And now she wants to, thank goodness for us, return to early learning, but has to go through the whole, the parental certificate
of parental improvement.
Yes, thank you. Certificate of parental improvement process in order to do that, or even to be able to take care of her own mother who needs elder care because of an accusation that was made against someone who was accused of hitting a child, someone who I know has never spanked their own children, and they're all grown now. So we see this type of thing happen across the board, and people write and complain, but nothing seems to be done. So I'm hopeful with the rest of the providers that this can change.
Okay. And I think that providers should not be listed as by default, right? So in my case, I had two parents that were disputing a child. One lived in Seattle, one lived here. The child was going to be school age, so the dad said someone had hit his child. He didn't know who, right? I'm pretty sure that's the extent of it. They didn't find it at mom's house, so then they have to check everywhere that child's been, which then defaulted on us. There was no mark on the child, and they still had to list a staff member. And I have cameras. I told them they could have all the camera footage. They said it would do no good because there was no specifics. They still listed someone.
So they just
I think we got to deal with this. This is an emergency situation that needs to be dealt with. This is crazy. And the overarching thing is we're still stressed out for being open in COVID. For somebody to send us an email that says today, July 1st, be ready for random pop-ups. Like we don't have anything better to do. Our staff are still getting COVID. kids are still getting COVID, and this overreach of Big Brother all up in our mix is so unfair.
Yeah, it would be nice at least, even out of respect and as a courtesy, and I did mention this, is just to at a minimum, and I put this in the notes to Deanna, is to at least give, number one, this is something we've been talking about for a while, to at least give a 60-day window that it can still be unannounced, but at least, especially for family homes, gives them a chance to have a life and plan and not be worried about if I'm shut down, if I'm not there, what's going to happen. And because at the end of the day, for most people, you may have competent staff, but you still, it would be nice to be able to plan and know, like, oh, okay, well, this 60-day or 30-day period, it'd be nice to be able to have all the teachers there as we can. So just something that shows just a small amount of respect in treating the workforce as professionals. It can still be unannounced, but at least you give a specific time period, as well as what Angie had said about there are so many sites, I know including mine, that we're still being very conservative in masking and not letting folk in our building. And the idea of having someone come in who has been who knows where and other places, roaming around for the amount of time, which is usually 2 to 4 hours in our facility, is not, that just simply doesn't make good sense.
So Emily, I'm gonna chime in for a second. I feel like monitoring visits needs to be a topic of conversation at probably the next meeting we have that's not related to recommendations. Especially with that email from today.
Well, I mean, was there any notice given to providers that this would be happening today? This announcement, I mean, like, why is this so out of the blue?
I am not sure. I hadn't heard about it. I know, I mean, we've talked about monitoring visits before, but anyway, I know we've talked about going back to in-person a while back. I had no idea when, like, a deadline or anything. But I don't know if that was even back then when we had that conversation. I don't know if they even knew a deadline at that point. But I know the topic has been discussed before with this. I'm pretty sure we had this conversation with this. I could be wrong. It could have been provider supports, but at the beginning of the development and the creation of this group.
Well, I recall that this happened once before and Travis was involved, and then they changed it. They said, oh yeah, okay, we're not going to start this. But it seems to me, given the response the last go around, that there would have been actually some, sort of like, we need to let you know that in 30 days or whatever, that that we're going to go back to this, because then it would have given, I mean, it's just interesting that the timing of everything with regard to the background checks and it's like, that's the kind of stuff that erodes trust, doesn't build trust.
Right. And Susan, I'm recollecting the exact same conversation you are with Travis.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember us having that conversation, and I know there was pushback then even.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it looks like Eliza is in the chat. She's checking.
Yeah, I mean, I am not totally aware of all the timing of conversations around unannounced visits, but unannounced visits is the requirement from the feds for monitoring visits. And then the return to in-person is probably related to the shift away from like the COVID state of emergency and things like that. But I'm not entirely sure. So that's why I'm asking to see if that was a part of why maybe this deadline might have to do with being a fiscal year that started the fiscal year, which is which is the federal like timeline of their oversight of what Washington licensing does.
Well, I guess I would just say that, you know, that's not a good enough reason just because of if that's true, because what we do know is that COVID is still alive and well in all of our lives. And yeah, that's just not a good enough reason to say, well, we need to resume this when it's just not safe, period.
Yeah, because we're, you know, we don't have that luxury of working from home. We've been frontline since the beginning. So if you just think about that, and we're the ones and our staff are putting ourselves at risk. And think about just one licensor going to 3 centers being asymptomatic, walking around, and what that could possibly do. And if nothing else, even if the staff don't become sick, you know, having directors out and how that does impact the flow of our environments and our sites.
We can definitely have monitoring visits be a topic at the July 27th meeting. It sounds like that's very pressing for you guys. So we will work on getting that scheduled. If there's no other comments on that, I just want to touch on some other responses we've received. Separating minimum licensing requirements from licensing book and everything above should be attached to early achievers, and through the rating, you meet the rest. So I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. So you're saying so this sounds like a recommendation to me that there should be separate. You should separate the minimum licensing requirements. And then
I'll try to
anything
give you an
above.
example. I'll give you an example. There is a requirement that you talk to your families about culturally relevant activities or whatever, once a year and annually upon entry, and then once a year. That does not seem to should not be a licensing requirement that is around safety. That sounds more like a best practice EA something. So we're saying somehow early achiever rules have gotten mushed in, or best practice ideas have gotten mushed in to basic licensing. And that needs to be separate so that you know what basic licensing rules are, which is what it looks like they're saying. If they show up on these pop-up visits, they're going to do this basic thing. That should be separated out anytime. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yep, thank you so much. That clarifies that a lot.
And I think also it's a topic because we say, oh, you know, a new provider should be tiered in to being in full compliance, right? Or a private pay person shouldn't have to meet the education standards, right? Only people that are taking subsidies. We're going over all this stuff because we don't have 2 separate systems. We have a system that includes everything in there that's impossible for a new provider to meet. Whereas if we had a basic license and then we got paid at a tier rate, or you went above and your rating showed that you were above in some areas, they could be separate to where we don't need to like try to redo all the rules. They shouldn't have been redone from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. We will add that to our list of recommendations. And I think I got through all of the feedback on that question, so we can go to the next question. How are you feeling about this group's progress and recommendations developed to date? And feel free to enter into the Mentimeter, or if you have something you want to say verbally, you can just unmute and share that as well.
I'm disappointed that this group doesn't have any real power.
I like the ideas that are being presented here. Most, like, there's a couple that I have questions about or whatever, but I think my worry is that we're spending all this time coming up with these ideas, and are they actually going to be implemented? And, you know, like, and I think that's kind of just the consensus I'm feeling from a lot of directors right now, is that we constantly are bombarded with, we get these new things that we have to do and we implement them. But where is the oversight for licensing to make sure that they're implementing things that we also need? Where, or that, you know, like from these recommendations, I think the progress that we're making for recommendations is great right now. But that, I would say that is my biggest concern, is that are these actually going to be put into practice? Or are we just all sitting here venting for, you know, 3-4 hours? And yeah, that feels great to vent and not feel like I'm quite so alone in all this, but that's not going to actually change anything. And so that for me is where I'm at with this specific question, is what I need to actually see these starting to be implemented.
I guess I would say that for, you know, DCYF staff, that clearly we are all experiencing licensing in the same way. You're not hearing us tell different stories. You're hearing us tell the same story. So it's like, what we don't want is for DCYF to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We need DCYF to do something different so that we can have better and different results. And that's where it doesn't feel like there's really a commitment to change behavior on the regulation or government staff side, but high expectations for those of us who do this work to basically, you say jump and we have to say how high. That's not how it should be. Our tax dollars pay your salaries.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to be working for us. And it doesn't, you know, sometimes it feels like we are working for you.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that. And as somebody working in the licensing division here, and I'm the quality assurance and continuous quality improvement manager. So my presence here, I've been at almost all of these meetings, you know, listening intently, making sure that I am understanding as best as possible the rationale and background behind these recommendations you're developing. And so, and, you know, Travis has been here as well, and different folks from DCYF who are personally responsible for different portions have also come and are hearing feedback. So I think we are definitely here and listening. And then our processes for creating change also are sometimes, you know, frustratingly slow for sure. But I do hope that our presence and engagement here can at least help alleviate some of those feelings of like you're talking into the void. And yeah, if like Lois, the ELAC co-chairs or community engagement want to speak more to like the formal process, yeah, that's what to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Eliza and Lois, I saw your comments in the chat. I don't think you were on when I mentioned or talking about process earlier in the call about this group and the recommendations and next steps and all of that. So that was one of the things I talked about, was making sure like our plan, community engagement's plan, is definitely to continue following up with licensing division, with the agency, to gather feedback from the recommendations, like what can be changed based on these recommendations, when, if things are going to be changed, what's the deadline, and then if not, why. So that was one of the things I mentioned earlier. And then a more formalized and elevated process is also when it's presented to ELAC and provider supports, there's two different scenarios here. So provider supports is a continuation of some of these topics in the provider world. So more deep dives and pushing these topics and elevating them. And then for ELAC, it would be ELAC taking recommendations, some or all, and putting them in the FSKA report, the formal report that goes to the governor and the legislature. So those were the follow-up pieces. I know there's multiples, so it's hard to track all of them. And then to answer your question really quickly, feel free to unmute too if I'm misstating anything, but can some of this happen prior? So one of the things we talked about earlier was from the feedback loop and the merit comments, and we are following up with merit to see if some of this can be changed now instead of waiting, because we've already had the conversation with merit and we've gotten feedback from merit. So we are pressing internally to see if we can get some of this to quickly happen, particularly in the merit aspect, because it is like, I think you heard part of the conversation about whether it's an employee or whether it's the director, the notification pieces and the side of things. So we are following up with that. Go ahead, Lois. I saw you unmute.
No, I just wanted to say one thing. You know, Susan, you had commented about the staff, and I can say, having been between ELAC and some of this other work, that I can definitely see a difference, especially from the CE team around trying to make sure that information is shared out with the other groups and within the department, and trying to constantly push for change and making sure our voices are heard. Sometimes it probably, I imagine for them and for us, it feels like we're hollering into the wind, or not even the wind, man, a tornado. But I know that it does make a difference. And that's why I'm always glad we keep showing up and keep pushing, because 5 years ago, this wasn't here. We didn't have a chance to have these conversations and to be able to affect any change. So the fact that we're here and can do that, and then to let everyone know, and Deanna, I'm sorry, I know I've been in and out, but like ELAC just sent a letter to Ross, or email to Ross, supporting the letter that came out of FSKA. So everyone working together, supporting each other, I really think will continue to affect change, but also remembering that this is the Titanic that we're trying to turn, not like a canoe or a skiff or a little rowboat. So it's just going to take a lot more effort, and let's try to get as many people to come to these meetings and share their experience, because it's happening across the state. So it shows the systemic. So we need to continue working together to change the system. Sorry, that was more of a speech than anything else, but I just felt it was important to share and to also just talk about what I know that CE is trying to do.
Thanks, Lois. Laura, you have your hand up as well.
I just think it's important that DCYF recognizes that center providers need a voice also to be heard, because home providers have a union, right? So they can speak to the union and they have some representation. Whereas us center owners, we can't join the union. Our staff could, right? But we cannot. And we cannot have disparate, we can't be separated from our staff, right? We need to be in unison because we are working together. And so we need an avenue and to be heard and recognized that we also have important voices. And so I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. And that is honestly, to kind of piggyback what Lois said, it aligns with what you're talking about, Laura. I mean, the provider supports group, before it was provider supports, was called Licensing Center Advisory Subcommittee. That was actually created back at Department of Early Learning to provide a voice, to elevate a voice of centers at the Department of Early Learning. I mean, that's initially why that subcommittee was created. And we created that on our own because we definitely heard that same we were aware of that happening on a consistent basis. And we definitely heard that message loud and clear. And so now it's morphed a little bit into more of a broader perspective, provider perspective, and making sure that we hit key areas of providers' work to make sure those are represented on that group. However, it's still very much provider focused, and we try to maintain that and keep it a provider conversation table. So thinking about that, Laura, like participating in those two, you're more than welcome. Everyone, obviously, all of our meetings that community engagement hosts are always open to the public, and all of the information can be found on our community engagement page. So anyone is able to participate any given time. Nobody is ever turned away. So, or if you have questions, you can always reach out to us. We can definitely connect you to the right table where conversations are taking place that we know about. So I didn't mean to cut, or I mean, I know this conversation kind of went this way about the group's progress and the recommendations developed today. So we will, for now, skip this question. I heard that, you know, obviously, Dawn, I know you made some comments like, yes, the recommendations are good to go. As of right now, they're great, right? But it's really the trust. Where is that in the outcomes and next steps of these recommendations? What's really going to happen?
Well, I was wondering, I mean, maybe it's because of the role you all have, but you know, sometimes it helps to get some ping back, like you know, response in some way. And like, so is there this belief that our recommendations are irresponsible and not appropriate? I mean, you know, we never get the sense of like how are they even received? Like, do they make sense to you all? Are you what, you know, how do we even know, you know, how it's being received?
I was actually just talking about this with Deanna today, now that this group is starting to like, you know, really clarify your recommendations. That then licensing would have a look and ask clarifying questions, right? Because sometimes it's maybe so broad that we're not quite, like when I read it, at least I shouldn't speak for other people, like when I'm reading some of them, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure like exactly what that means in terms of like how we would implement changing that. So yeah, hopefully, or not hopefully, but like, I don't know exactly when in the process, but that would be a step. That makes sense to me.
Have any of you in DCUF making these rules like actually been a provider?
I have been an early childhood teacher and a director before, yes. I'm also, I've been in the quality assurance, continuous quality improvement position for just not even 1 year yet. But yeah, I know that many licensors have also worked in childcare programs.
Mm-hmm.
But like the rule, when you say rules, do you mean like WAC? Because that was through NRM specifically.
I think what I hear Susan saying is we're spending a lot of time talking about things that we know would make improvements, and that's because we're can-do folks. So if you give us something that we got to do, we're going to figure it out. Just like with COVID, nobody came to us when the governor shut everything else down. We stayed open. We figured out what to do. We figured out to get rid of our rugs and you know, soft toys that would hold on to germs. We figured that out. Public health came later, maybe 3 months down the road, you know, because everybody was scared and panicked. We don't panic. That's just who we are. We just know how to do things. So when we come back with these suggestions of how to make things better, number one, we're always thinking about safety. That's why it didn't bother us when they were saying, you know, clean and Lysol and this, whatever. We were already doing that. So, you know, we're always going to think about the best things for our business in a safe way, because number one, we don't want to get sued by parents. We don't want to have a bad reputation. So I think what I hear Susan saying is we're reasonable We're giving you reasonable ways to do things in a quality way. And I don't think we have time to have it linger on in a process somewhere because we do things efficiently. So it's like we give you these suggestions. I would suspect, within 60 days, we need answers that, yep, we're going to do it or we're not. So that's what I was a little concerned today when I heard, how much this is going to go down the road. We don't have that much time to play around with these things. It's our daily grind.
And so to follow up that, Angie and Susan and the rest of the group, so this temporary license subcommittee was created to meet for the year and provide recommendations by December 1. So if you all are feeling like we want to submit the recommendations now halfway through and then do a secondary recommendation document, that's fine. I mean, it's however you want to structure it. We will still go through the process of having ELAC be presented on these before we push them to DCYF. But I do want to specifically ask, like, if you want to stop here and make this one of the hard stopping points with the recommendations that have already been drafted, we were just trying to give you all a break and see what's been developed and have that midway check-in to make sure that they're still on track. Because also from our perspective, it gets pretty cumbersome when we're tracking everything that you all are providing. You saw that in all the Jamboards, and trying to create recommendations out of all of the notes that we take and things that we hear you saying, things that we're capturing. So we want to do those check-ins with you to make sure that we're on the same page, because we definitely don't want to craft a recommendation that does not align with what is fitting for you all, because this is your group and these are your recommendations, in our opinion.
Could we, could you draft something for, say, the next big meeting that shows, like, this is what we're going to, like, with that idea in mind, that this is, we are going to submit these recommendations. I don't think this group is large enough, just because so many people have left this meeting, for any of us to agree to make that decision today. But I think if at the next big meeting that we had, if we had that list of what you would submit, and then as a group, we could vote on that at the next meeting. I mean, I would be in favor, honestly, of at least some of these things being submitted now, because they're not really things that can wait until December, or at least for us, feels like we can wait till December. Just because, I mean, I can say some of these things, the idea of waiting another 5, 6, 7, I mean, because even that's just getting them submitted, that it's another process of actually even trying to get them in place. Right. That waiting another year or more to get some of this in place is going to kill businesses, going to hurt our centers. Like, these are things that we need to have more immediately. So that would be my recommendation, would be if you guys could try and create a list of what you would recommend that we submit now, and then we could vote on that or have that discussion at the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely create that. And then we might send it out to you all after the July 6th meeting, when we have the secondary, the second version of this meeting with other providers, just to make sure we're capturing everything and capturing all of the feedback based on these current recommendations. And then what we can do is we can prioritize them based on what we've heard today and what you responded to on that last question we just had in the Mentimeter. And we can prioritize them in, which ones do you want to do right now? I mean, one of the questions or the comments we talked about during the background check recommendation development was short term, what needs to happen right now. This is immediate based on the July 1 background check date, right? And then what's long term that can wait and go into the December 1 recommendation document. So we could definitely go through that and prioritize them, Dawn, because it might be, that's easier to focus and hone in on and have a drafted message related to that. Like, these are things that are a priority that cannot wait until December 1. We need you to address these now. We want to hear feedback from you within X amount of days. And we want to know what can be done to save the industry, really.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that would be, for at least for me, in my opinion, would be the next best step.
Okay, can I see like thumbs up? Does everyone else agree? I know I saw a couple comments in the chat. Laura, thank you.
I think that's a good interim measure. This is Susan.
Okay, Susan, thank you.
I do want to thank you all for, working with us and trying to help elevate our voices, because we do it in this business. We work hard to keep kids safe, and and it's true, we barely survived COVID, right? Like I still have parents outside. I'm still paying door staff, and then to have someone to walk around with the licensor on top of that, it's, I get it that licensing needs to do what they need to do also, but it is important that at a ground level that you guys hear us with, with listening ears, and we see some action behind our words.
Right. I totally agree. That is community engagement's job, is we definitely take a lot of the notes and feedback we get from all of our groups and push that onto the agency. And getting feedback and closure and comments and next steps. I will say we spend a lot of time on these feedback loop documents, and really making sure, one, that either we need to ask you questions, Eliza talked about this earlier, like clarifying some of your recommendations. We either do that and making sure we're connecting the dots.
Good afternoon, Prim. ABC Childcare.
Making sure that we are following up with you all and having some sort of timeline and a feedback process, like closing that loop so you know what the agency is going to do, not just looming your feedback out into the, this whole of universe and never hear about it ever again, which is not helpful.
We don't have time for that. And I'm glad I brought this up to this because I didn't realize that it was going out to December, so I apologize, but I am super happy that you've heard from everybody that, yeah, let's try to get something going now, because we can't wait that much longer.
Yeah, well, we'll work on this and get it ready to talk with you all about at that July 27th meeting. And then, so maybe we can have this turned around, by August 1, or go to ELAC. They have a meeting at the very beginning of August, so we could present then and then turn it around then. So yeah, we will definitely work on this. And to go back to the very, very beginning, we had Angie, you brought up, well, Angie and others brought up, I don't want to say just Angie, the meeting to talk about, I'm sorry, I'm pulling up my email right now. I just want to see if we've had any comments. Okay, so the guns in centers and police response. So we haven't had a response yet, but we did, Eliza and I discussed that, and we have reached out to them with some dates during the week of June 27th, some options. So we're trying to hone in on a couple dates, and we will get that final announcement out to you, hopefully when we do the follow-up. So I just wanted to close that loop.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, and I did also just hear back a little confirmation about the return to unannounced monitoring visits, and it is because the federal waiver expired and we need to meet CCDF requirements, because that's the federal government oversees us. And all licensing staff are vaccinated and will be wearing masks. And administrators are also working with licensing staff to reduce time on site to the maximum extent possible. So that's just the updates that I got via email briefly, but if you have more questions about it, if you want to, you can pass it along to me.
Do they follow our safety protocols, like for our site? Because for us, we have, covers for the shoes and all that kind of stuff. So they will follow those policies too.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
But I think that if there are more questions about the return to in-person visits, if we can also, Deanna, maybe just put that through the feedback loop so we can make sure everyone gets all the same information.
Yeah, are they gonna be, do you have a testing requirement also? Cause like I know there's programs here that test their own staff at least twice a week. So, you know, cause I mean, it's one thing to be vaccinated, but you can still be a carrier. And so what's the testing requirement for licensors?
And I guess my concern is licensors bouncing from place to place, right? So while I'm still paying staff and screening kids outside, they come from a facility that's not doing that, pick up germs, come to me the next day, and then suddenly, you know, I have a possible exposure. I guess that's the troublesome thing for me is that I think visits should be one a week and the licensor should test every Monday or something. So that way we're not cross-contaminating from place to place.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up with some of your questions. And we will, we're already going to talk about this, having this at an upcoming meeting to have this conversation more in depth, where you can ask additional questions, but we will add all of your questions today into our email that we're going to send to licensing to get further details. And we'll try to turn this around to you guys pretty quickly.
I really appreciate that you guys are getting this information during this meeting. So this is not in any way directed to you guys, but if licensing knew this was expiring, we're only being given basically 2 weeks notice here. And I know this has been brought up repeatedly, and I do feel like needs to be added to all these lists and everything, that we need more notification. If they knew this was expiring, there's no way they didn't know this 15 days prior at the end of May, that this was possibly going to be something that was happening. So that's something that we need more notification here. We need to not be getting a week or 2 weeks notice that these things are changing. And I know this has been brought up prior, and I really feel like that is something that needs to be added to this discussion and going to DCYF, because in no way is this directed to you guys. This has come up repeatedly where suddenly they're just changing things and we're only getting a week, maybe 2 weeks notice. And that's just not okay. It's really, that creates a lot of distrust for us as well.
Right. And I will add it, Dawn, what I'm hearing is this another recommendation. It goes into our communication one, because we did have that conversation about communication to providers. So we will add this, you know, with enough notice. I mean, I 100% agree with you. Notifications, we all deserve notifications ahead of time, not last minute, in order to adjust. So we will definitely add that into this recommendation document.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I know we're over time. Thank you all so much for hanging in there with us. As you know, July 6th is the next meeting. However, it will be just to discuss the recommendations again. So you're more than welcome to attend if you would like. You don't have to. You won't be missing anything. We will collaborate or collect all the feedback and put it all into one collaborative document. So it's not like they're going to be separated out. And then from there, we will start doing that prioritization piece. Sorry, I cannot talk right now. And then we will come back with you and have that prioritization conversation about submitting recommendations earlier based on how they prioritize and the level of prioritizing. So thank you all. We greatly appreciate you and taking the time out of your day.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Yeah, have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Deanna.